Chapter 20. It took 30 more years to do all I needed to do. I went through each ship, each wreck, and took what I could use. I burned roads through the jungle and built haulers. I built a sprawling shop with tools that would have made Giclet drool with envy. I dipped into the mass of minds that lived within me. Over time I learned to survive the storm of the multitude, to take what I needed and go on. Giclet was often there with me. And an engineer named Hadrid 232. And a Z-space theorist named Nu. And 100 other scientists, technicians, theorists, builders, designers, innovators. And biologists as well. Lakotha was with me. Others, many others, from other races. The work changed shape, mutated, grew like a living thing and in fact became a living thing. For although I was building a ship, I was building so much more. I was building a new race. A race of one. A race of millions. I was singular and plural all at once. I was alive and I was a machine. Engines were a part of me. Computers linked directly with my brain and soon the link was forgotten and the line disappeared. Sensors were my senses. I was vast. Vast enough to release the multitude. 30 years, and at last I was ready. I had passed most of a century on the blue moon. It was dying. The air worsened slowly, but that was all right. I no longer needed air. The waters reeked of decay, but I no longer needed to drink. The fish had long since become extinct. But I had saved the dead. And now I opened wide the gate to my multitude, never to close it again. All my Ketrans, all my generationals, my Dankans, my Hyati, my 333s, my Werbs and Breets and Gophenachiliasts, my multitudinals, my Chanwath, my Skretna and Illimans and Capassins and my one Unamite and so many others. Race after race. I emptied each dead mind into my extended brain, my biological mechanical synthetic construct, all free again. So much knowledge, so much. And yet, when the flood was calmed, only I was truly alive. It was all me. I was still alone. I lit my engines and rose from the surface of the dying moon. From space I looked back on it. What was fitting? Some races burned their dead, some ate them, some buried them in the ground. Some finality was called for so that the floating bones and exoskeletons and shells of all those honored dead could cease to be grotesque. I called on my weapons and I blasted the moon till it broke apart, till the atmosphere was ripped away, till the sea boiled up into the vacuum, till the molten remains spiraled slowly down in the gravity well of the planet and were incinerated on re-entry. Then I entered Z-space and put 1 billion miles between myself and that foul place. Now what was I to do? I was unique. As alone as only a unique creature can be. I was part of no species. I was part of many species, but there was no hope of companionship there. Who would welcome me into their system? I had become a physical embodiment of the interspecies unnet I used to dream of. I was a library of information from many races. And with my extended body/ship I was powerful beyond reckoning. Now what? Now what? Now what? What is your game now, Ellimist? I thought of returning to Ket. But that would only cause me pain. Return to what? To empty skies where my people once lived? I flew. In and out of Z-space, in and out of orbits. Time meant nothing to me, I was in no hurry. But the loneliness was another matter. I took refuge in creating subroutine, simulations of people. I tried to talk to them, tried to. But how can you really talk to your own creation? How can you talk to a machine you've programmed? It's an exercise in narcissism. It's the beginning of madness. I knew now why Father had kept me alive. He had long since learned the emptiness of communication without hope of surprise. A Ketran, any sentient species, is only his free will. Freedom and sentience are inseparable. The captive, programmed mind is no mind at all. I flew for a long time. Years. Looking. For what? I didn't know. And then, I dropped from Z-space and entered a system where two planets were at war. They were technologically advanced, though not capable of Z-space travel yet. They communicated by microwave and laser emissions. They moved across the lands and seas and through the skies of their respective planets. They had suppressed most diseases. Two planets in strangely close proximity, no more than 250,000 miles separating them at their closest points. One was called Joel, the other the Inner World. The Inner World was actually in the more distant orbit, but then Inner may have been a reference to some other factor. Neither Jalians nor Inners were part of my multitude, though the 333s had knowledge of their existence. I was in a far reach of the galaxy. I arrived, invisible to either side. I arrived in the midst of a ship-to-ship battle. In fact, I dropped out of Z-space within 20 miles of being struck by a terrifically powerful Jalian beam that missed its intended target, missed me, and finally, diffused and harmless, slightly warmed the nickel and iron surface of a passing asteroid. Well, I said. I'd long since lost any reluctance to converse with myself. I seemed to have stumbled into a war. The Jalian ship, a fantastically painted behemoth half a mile long, fired again. This time the beam found its victim. A small, swift inner ship that looked, with its smooth, swept lines as if it had been designed to move through water, blew apart. The Jalian jubilation was short-lived. A swarm of inner craft emerged from the primitive stealth state that allowed them to hide from Jalian sensors. The Jalian ship fired again and again and annihilated 5 of the attackers, nearly a third of the total. But then the Inners fired. Their weapons were weaker. The Jalian ship did not blow apart. But the outer skin had been sliced open. Pressurized atmosphere blew out into space. And bodies, too. Writhing figures, helpless. I acted before thinking. Acted on pure instinct. I extended a force field between the Jalian ship and the Inner Worlders. Both sides fired. Neither side's weapons penetrated my force field. I moved closer and let them see me. How it must have shocked them. Their ships were boxes of steel and titanium and composites. Mine was a living thing, crystal and flesh and composites all melded together, all wrapped in force fields of unchallengeable power. I was a visitor from a future they had only barely begun to glimpse. By all rights they should have powered down and waited to learn my pleasure. Far from it. Both sides took less than 5 minutes to touch me with their active sensors, to feel around me, half-sighted. And then the Inner Worlders opened fire. On me. The Jalians used the distraction to fire on the Inners, and in seconds what had been a two-front war became a three-way free-for-all. I almost laughed. But the sheer malevolence of these two species was disgusting. I could have destroyed both fleets with a shrug of my wings. I stretched out my power and wrapped my fields around them. I drained their power, damped their engines, scrambled their sensors, and left them drifting, helpless through space. Then I opened communications. "Your war is over," I announced.